Hello everyone and welcome back to another Forza Horizon 4 video where today we are taking a look at the new 2019 Zenvo TSR-S. Now this is a car that was made available as part of Update 24 in the summer playlist. In order to obtain this car, all you have to do is come right here to the Horizon Festival, look over to the side here, you see this stage right here. You just have to take out your camera, take a photo of your car in front of this stage and you will unlock this new car, which you'll see in a moment has a lot of very interesting features. So the first thing that you are bound to notice about this car as soon as you start driving is that it has a very active rear wing. Not only does this pitch forward and backwards depending on if you're on the brakes or not, but it does lean from side to side depending on which direction you are currently turning. Now the idea behind this is generally that it wants to maximize the downforce on the side of the car which needs it the most. So if you're turning to the left, it increases the wing up on the right and then vice versa. So you should theoretically be able to take corners at a much higher speed than you would with a non-active wing. So what I'm going to be doing today is taking this car for a spin in two different races, one of which will be S2 dry and one of them will be S2 in the wet. And the reason for that is because supposedly, because of the amount of downforce that this car has, it's actually a really good choice for S2 wet races. And that's, I know, probably not something that most of us normally participate in, so it'll be interesting to see if it changes my mind and maybe I'll do more S2 wet races in the future. Okay, so we are kicking things off right here in the dry. We're going to see how this works. This is an S2 998 rated car. I just grabbed some random tune off of the Creative Hub. I don't know which one in particular it is. Honestly, when I do these kind of videos, I'm generally just trying to get a feel of the car and not trying to find necessarily the best overall tune for the car. Who knows, maybe it's actually really good. But for my short time in using this, I have experienced that it has very good turning abilities. And you're going to see right here that we're already up behind this Kia Stinger, which is actually pretty impressive to see. I don't really see the AI choosing that in S2 very often. But one thing you're going to notice with this is that the braking ability is also amazing. And that's because not only does, of course, the wing go from left to right, but it does pitch forward and backwards like a lot of other active wings. And because of that, you are able to brake a lot more quickly than you normally may be able to think you can. Okay, so we're hanging on to the back of this Kia Stinger pretty well. It's actually pulling away a little bit, but I haven't really raced any of these kind of tracks in a while. So it could just be that I'm underperforming, but you know what? The car is pretty quick. But one of the big things that I have noticed is that I don't think it's necessarily going to compete with a lot of the other S2 sort of meta cars. And the reason for that is definitely because it lacks on the top end. It's very good at turning in like high-speed corners and things like that, but it seems to lack quite a bit if you get to a very long straightaway where something that is more of a meta vehicle is going to just kind of leave it in the dust. Okay, so now that we've cleanly gotten away from the Kia, spoke too soon, here it comes. And you can see right there, actually, that's kind of the example of what I was talking about. I thought I was pretty comfortably far ahead, and then on the straightaway is where it really picked up on me a lot, so it's probably got a higher top end than my car currently does. Now, that could be due to the tune that I'm using, but even on stock, I did notice that even though this car is an S2 class at stock, it really doesn't seem to have the speed as a lot of the other meta cars do. It's really reliant on its turning ability and the fact that it's just so stable on the ground, and it's not really so reliant on its overall speed. And we're going to come bring it home, and I mean, it was a pretty comfortable race. Like I said, the Kia did kind of outpower us on the straightaway there, but we definitely beat it out in the corners. Now before we move on to the next race, which will be an S2 wet race, I do want to say that apparently this car is pretty capable at drifting. Now I'm not necessarily the best by any means at drifting in this game. In fact, I'm still pretty mediocre at it, but I've still found it that it's pretty easy to sustain even high-speed drifts in this, probably because of that rear wing being very active and the fact that it can kind of, you know, change the weight of the car and how much downforce you have applied to each side. That kind of makes it a lot easier to keep the car stable in these long sweeping corners, and that does apply to drifting. Now, of course, this is not a drifting tune, I am sure of that, but if you were to put some tires on here, get a different suspension, you could probably have a lot more success, and who knows, maybe you could actually make this a viable drift car at some of the higher levels. Alright, so here we go, starting off in Edinburgh at night in the wet. This should be the ideal scenario for this car because there's a lot of really tight 90-degree corners where ideally that extra downforce is really going to come in handy. And you're going to see here, my driving ability is obviously not the best, but it does seem pretty well planted considering that it is a wet race. And of course, everybody knows the wet and the ice physics in Forza are definitely not that great by any means. I feel like most people traditionally stick to summer in the dry whenever they're trying to race at higher classes, just because they find it far less frustrating. Now that being said, I did make it through that corner pretty cleanly, and it doesn't handle too poorly. I'm still not the greatest at all, especially in the wet, but you can carry a bit more speed with this thing than you might otherwise think, even though there's less traction on the road right now. All right, that being said, I'm still struggling to get around some of these cars. Again, that's definitely not the car's fault. That is more so just the fact that my driving ability is not great by any means. But we're going to go ahead and move alongside here for a second, at least try to. And we do suffer a little bit on the straightaway, but as soon as we get to the corner where the AI chose to brake, I did not have to. Although that's probably just the AI being the AI in Forza. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the downforce that I have over them. But we're going to see here on this long straight, can I keep up to first place here? And do I lose any ground to second place as a result of the top end not being the greatest? I'm getting like 215 or so here. I make it through that corner pretty cleanly. I do think maybe that was the AI once again. But you know what? The car handles really well. Now around this corner is where you're really going to be able to probably see where the downforce comes in handy. So we got on the brakes pretty hard. But you know what? Usually I miss that corner a lot more than that. So I think that this car might actually have some sort of potential as I just drive it head on into the wall, because that is just how bad I actually am. But you know what? I still think the car is pretty planted. I am saying that despite sliding around, I think maybe this tune isn't necessarily the best by any means. But considering it is in the wet and I would probably be performing significantly worse if this was a different car, I don't think I can really complain. Now here we come to a final drag race to the end. We're probably going to lose out on this because, like I said, it does not have the top end. But I still think it is a pretty good car. Now, I heard a lot of people say that this is like sort of an S tier car in terms of driving in the rain. And I don't do, honestly, enough driving in the rain in Forza to really dispute that. I will say it's not going to make it trivial, at least if you're not like well above average probably. But at least in my case, it was tolerable. You know what? I could race in the rain with this and probably have an enjoyable time. But I'm still probably going to stick to summer in the dry just because that's the easiest way to race. And then the final thing that I would like to mention about this car is sort of the way in which it was implemented into the game. So before now, I don't think there's really been any way where you could unlock a car by simply taking a picture of whatever car you have in front of a specific location. I think that's pretty neat, and I feel like there's a lot of people that don't really use the photo feature in this game outside of people making thumbnails for YouTube or trying to get some kind of picture just to share with their friends. Nobody really uses it all that often for like a variety of vehicles and a variety of locations, and so I think it's pretty encouraging to see that Playground Games has implemented this, just because it means that even though the game is, 2 years old, we're 24 updates in, they're still adding new ways for us to unlock new vehicles. And I think that's pretty encouraging. There's not a lot of games where you can see that. And yeah, it's pretty trivial. I mean, it takes you literally 5 seconds to go and unlock this car. But cars don't need to be difficult to unlock. There are already some cars that can be pretty difficult to unlock. I don't think all of them need to be, especially a car like this. This car's, it's just really fun. It's really interesting for the most part. So even if it's not the best car to race, I feel like a lot of people want to get their hands on it just because it's very unique. There's no other car in the game that really has a rear wing that comes into comparison with this. Now, that being said, I still don't know if I would necessarily use this all the time in S2 races. I do think that I'd probably still use the Devo when it comes to wet races, just because I do feel like it's a bit more planted. Of course, it doesn't have the active wing, so theoretically, I don't think it has as much downforce, but it's still a really easy car to drive. The top end's probably still in excess of at least what this tune is on the Zenvo currently. We've just absolutely slaughtered that family that was in that car. Rest in peace. But you know what? It's good. And I would recommend you at least try it out, because maybe you're just a better driver than I am. You probably are. In which case, you might be able to find more success with it. You know what? By all means, go ahead and give it a shot. I do think it looks amazing. I'm kind of, picky in how some exotic cars like this can look. But you know what? I think it does look pretty clean. The only thing about it that does look weird is the rear wing, and I think that's acceptable considering it's basically a prototype and it's a proof of concept. I don't think it's necessarily something that is going to stay there forever. And this is also not, a car that you're probably ever to see in real life in person, because, I mean, it's just so far out of left field. But that is all I have for you guys today in this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you would like seeing more content like this in the future, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really does help me out, and it lets me know that you would like to see more content like this. And that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you have fun unlocking the Zenvo, and I'll see you all in the next one.